Hello everyone, this is part 68 of What If Naruto Meets the Nine Tails Early, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Underneath the red moon, the Shinigami himself made his presence known. All around, those still standing were brought to the ground by a metal rail, screams of their terror echoing off the buildings. In the midst of all this, a small boy frantically searched for some haven from the surrounding bee. Yes, his parents would protect him. The small boy ran for the safety of his parents' house, just as a few more people succumbed to their deaths. The door behind him, the boy let out a sigh of relief. Tucson. Carson, shouted the boy as he turned around, only to be met with the sight of a river of bee spilling from the of his parents. Fear and disbelief set in. This couldn't be happening. Why was this happening? How was this happening? Sasuke. That voice, the boy knew that voice. It was his elder brother. Yes, his brother had to be alive still. Perhaps he knew what was going on. Why were mom and dad However, the boy was stopped in his tracks as his brother stepped out of the shadows, his sword dripping with the bee of the very people who brought him into this world. Nissan. Sasuke, the brother's eyes spun red as everything came back to him. No longer was Sasuke an innocent child, powerless and afraid. Sasuke stared back at his brother, who had already taken so much from him years ago. Foolish little brother, said Itachi, this time, the voice coming from behind. As Sasuke turned, to face the voice of the man he was so set upon, his eyes widened at the sight in front of him. Hatake Kakashi, his teacher and the man who put so much effort into him in order to turn him into a man who could prevent the very person in front of him from repeating the tragedy of his childhood, strung up on a post with probably a dozen swords stuck through his torso. The famed Sharingan eye that Kakashi was well known for, fell from its socket, and the remaining lone eye showed no sign of life. Haruno Sakura, his teammate and lover. She had been the one who showed him it was still possible to love, even after he sought to seclude himself from the world. Lying on the ground, bound, Itachi pressed the sole of his foot on her head before drawing his blade. Kikun, Sakura managed to mutter out. She was still alive. He could still save her from this man. However, before he could even take a step, splattered as Itachi's blade swung down upon her staining her already pink hair with the red of her bee. Unable to speak, petrified in fear, a giant figure appeared just behind Itachi. Sasuke immediately recognized this giant as the Gedo Mizo statue. A blue phantom emerged from the statue's mouth. Afraid to look up, the unmistakable glint of an orange jacket caught his attention. Uzumaki Naruto, his brother, the biggest annoyance in his life, and the one who had saved him multiple times from losing himself to the traitor Orochimaru, floated within this blue phantom, the life being from every pore of his body. Had it not have been for his blonde teammate, then perhaps he wouldn't have learned how to be happy again. Just as Sasuke moved, just a slight twitch of a movement, the Gedo Mizo's mouth closed and the blue phantoms retreated as Naruto's cold and lifeless body dropped to the ground below and the words, "Sealing complete," echoed throughout the night. Suddenly, the scenery changed, back to the townscape that was the Uchiha district in Konoha. Once again, he was back at this night. But rather than the bee of his fellow clansmen, the of the ones he could call friends littered the streets. Yuki Haku, Hyuga Hinata, Inazuka Kiba, Aberrane Shino, Fu, Nara Shikamaru, Akamai Kichuji, Yamanaka Ino, Hyuga Neji, Tent, Rock Lee, Kurama Yakumo, Sai, Kurenai Sensei, Asuma Sensei, Gai Sensei, everyone. Their bee lay at his feet, covered in the same wounds that he saw on that night. Sasuke, you're weak, spoke Itachi, appearing in front of Itachi with their parents at his feet. Stop it, growled Sasuke. This had to be some sort of genjutsu as he flared his chakra, trying desperately to break it. The world flickered, but rather than the real world come back, he was now facing his sensei strung up on a post. Itachi stepped out from behind the post. You lack hatred, spoke Itachi as he jabbed the sword in his hand through Kakashi's gut, twisting it and causing the silver-haired Jonin to cry out in pain. Stop it, shouted Sasuke, flaring his chakra once again, hoping to break this genjutsu. Once again, the world flickered and he was faced with Naruto's S at the base of the Gedo Mazo. You will always be weak, said Itachi, just before the world flickered again. Sakura, gasped Sasuke. Lying out in front of him was Sakura, her clothes in tatters, her body scarred and her breath shallow and labored. Here, I control you. For the next 24 hours, I will take away everything you have struggled so hard to gain, said Itachi. Grasping his sword, Itachi drove his blade down in a path that would ell Sakura's heart. And you will be powerless to stop me. Itachi, enough. Chakra flared to Sasuke's Sharingan just as the blade reached Sakura. Rather than the blade shattered and the world around began to crack. Sasuke, shouted Guy as he noticed the trance-like state he and Itachi were in. Hey, the kid's done. No one's ever been able to escape from Itachi-san's eyes before, grinned Kisame. I can only begin to imagine what sort of horrors he's beginning to experience in there. Suddenly, a cough and labored breathing broke the two shinobis' stare down. However, the one who was struggling to breathe was Itachi, not Sasuke. Ho? Questioned Kisame, raising a brow. Seems like the kid's grown a little, eh? Itachi-san. Sasuke, are you okay? Asked Guy. He remembered what that jutsu did to Kakashi years ago. Yeah, replied Sasuke. Because today's the day I K Itachi. Sharingan met Sharingan as Sasuke prepared himself for the very thing he spent years preparing for. There was truth in that genjutsu Itachi used on him. If he didn't stop Itachi today, this man was going to ell everything he had worked for, everyone he cared for, from this world. If he didn't end Itachi today, then there was no future. Kisame and Itachi locked eyes for a quick moment before the two turned back to Sasuke and Guy. What do you say we let the two of them engage in some brotherly bonding, proposed Kisame, getting a nod out of Guy. Sasuke, just remember Neji and Lee still have to prove themselves against you, said Guy. Go. I won't lose. I can't lose, declared Sasuke, getting a nod from Guy as he and Kisame took off, away from Sasuke and Itachi to fight their own battle. Karen, you two. Get out of here. From behind a tree, Karen was broken from her stupor. The chakra that these four were emitting was mind-blowing. Even Guy's and Sasuke's had changed upon meeting their challenges. It was almost suffocating. Ototo, I see your eyesight's improved, acknowledged Itachi. But has it improved enough? In a flash that would be undetectable to anyone without a Sharingan, the two brothers were upon one another, blades at each other's teeth. Sasuke threw Itachi off of him before unsealing half a dozen shuriken from his gloves and throwing them with blinding speeds at Itachi. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Even with a Sharingan, the speed at which the hundreds of shuriken were traveling proved to be too much for one person to dodge or evade as Itachi was pelted with a rain of metal. You've gotten stronger, Sasuke, spoke Itachi, appearing calmly from behind a tree. Sasuke struggled to hold back a smirk. Of course it wasn't going to be that easy as the Itachi dispersed into a flock of crows. Sasuke and Itachi made no moves until a blade burst from Itachi's C, drenched in the elder Uchiha's B. Itachi looked on as his younger brother just faded from existence, genjutsu. You've gotten stronger, but are you still forgetting what I told you? Said Itachi as once again, the skewered Itachi burst into a flock of crows, the original sitting on a tree branch above Sasuke. Let your hatred grow. Come at me with the same eyes I have. Only then can you hope to defeat me. I see you still haven't awakened it yet. The Mangekyo, replied Sasuke. I see, so you actually listened to me and read the tablets in the secret room, replied Itachi as he leapt down from his perch. Then you know, the true reason why I revealed myself to you. Sasuke's eyebrows raised at his brother's comment. The kaleidoscope will eventually lose its light. Blindness, replied Sasuke. Yes, however, there is a way to restore the Mangekyo's light, said Itachi. Throughout our clan's history, countless numbers of our descendants have gained the cursed eyes that are the Mangekyo. Even Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Izuna, both of who awakened their Mangekyo, eventually succumbed to the darkness. As Madara fell further and further, desperately trying to free himself from the darkness that was engulfing him, the fate shared by all of those who obtained the Mangekyo. As he fell into despair, the Mangekyo possessed him until he reached out towards a new source of light, plucking both eyes from his younger brother's head. Even Sasuke's eyes widened. The The secret tablets in the secret room had revealed many secrets behind the Mangekyo. He knew the Mangekyo would eventually fail, the Sharingan descending to blindness. But this new light. As he took his younger brother's eyes, light returned to Madara's world and the darkness never came again, explained Itachi. An eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, by changing hosts, the younger brother's eyes found an inextinguishable light. Many s through our clan's history piled up as others struggled to gain another's eyes hoping to gain this power, but none succeeded until him. And now, I shall follow in his footsteps, claiming my prize and gaining never-ending light and power greater than any that's ever been seen. Itachi let out an insane laugh. You Sasuke, why did I leave you alive that night? Because I knew the day would come where you'd become my new light. Petrified by Itachi's intentions and revelation, Sasuke was wrapped up as the trees surrounding them came to life. Now little brother, face me and become my light. The branches reached out, becoming claws and pressing into the surrounding Sasuke's eyes. So everything leads to this moment, said Sasuke. All the pain, all the suffering, I see, it ends here. Today I will bring about the end of your delusions and terror. The surroundings fizzled from existence and Sasuke regained the freedom of his own body. I'm afraid that's impossible, Sasuke. You cannot win against me because I have the Mangekyo Sharingan, replied Itachi. And you cannot get the Mangekyo because you lack hatred. I see, replied Sasuke. Flashback. A 12-year-old Sasuke stood in the hidden chamber beneath the Uchiha compound, staring at the ancient stone tablets that illuminated the truth behind the Sharingan's secrets. When he last attempted to read these tablets, much of them were blank. Further research through the clan's texts revealed that only those whose Sharingan has awoken could read the rest of the tablets. Now that Sasuke had awoken his Sharingan, it was finally time to see just what he'd have to do to obtain the eyes necessary to K his brother. Even he found himself startled by the answer, K those closest to your heart. End flashback. At that time, he had withdrawn his heart from the world, not opening it up to anyone, partially afraid that he'd become just like Itachi, am. As time passed, ever since he and his team had been together, 3 people worked their way into his closed heart, Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi. Could he really bring himself to K1 them? Sure, the power was tempting and even he was afraid to admit that there were times where he'd consider giving in to his darker desires, but then what? Flashback. Sasuke sat against a rock that had a few Chidori holes. It was only a few days left until the Chunin exam finals, until his match against Gaara. I think that's enough for today, called Kakashi. No, I can keep going, grunted Sasuke as he wearily pulled himself to his feet. I need to keep going, I need power. Kakashi sighed. While it was true his student was improving, the young Uchiha was still set on pursing strength only for Itachi. As Sasuke took a battle-readied stance, his legs faltered and he collapsed. No, we're done for today, stated Kakashi. You've reached your limit. Rest tonight and let your body recover. But if I don't get power, I'll never K him at this rate, shouted Sasuke. An immense pain came as Kakashi drove his knee into his student's gut, knocking him unconscious. By the time Sasuke awoke, it was already night and Kakashi was sitting opposite him around a small campfire. Why'd you do it? Grunted Sasuke. Because you were annoying me, stated Kakashi, nonchalantly. I thought we had been making progress. Progress on what? Asked Sasuke. Are you saying all this training was for nothing? Perhaps, replied Kakashi. I guess the answer to that depends on your answer to this question. When the day comes that Itachi finally does answer for his crimes, what next? Take your brother out of the equation. What is it you truly want? End flashback. What was it he truly wanted? He wanted to be happy. He wanted his family back, those he had once cared for. He wanted to still be able to spend time with his mother and father, even if he was overly strict at times. He wanted to come back from the academy and hear about his brother's latest mission. His brother, this was just another of his brother's plots to take away everything from him again. They thought he was ready. They thought he could finally bring closure to this travesty caused by his brother. It was weird, unexplainable even, but somehow that gave him strength. He wouldn't fall for Itachi's trap. He had chosen his path years ago. Then I'll K you without the Mangekyo, declared Sasuke. No hand signs, no indication, no nothing to warn Itachi as Sasuke's Chidori sharp spear extended from Sasuke's hand and L through Itachi's C. Foolish little brother, said Itachi as he exploded into several fireballs that were flying towards him. With a flick of his sword, he shot down all of the fireballs, seeing through the genjutsu disguise behind Itachi's shuriken. Itachi was immediately upon him as Sasuke blocked Itachi's kunai strike, just in time for Itachi to explode. Itachi stepped out from behind a nearby tree, hoping his exploding shadow clone didn't damage Sasuke's eyes too much. Before the flames and smoke could clear, the ground beneath Itachi rumbled and buckled as a number of flaming dragon heads erupted from the ground beneath him. Itachi quickly jumped out of the way as the fire dragons soared clear into the sky. Itachi landed atop a tree branch, panting slightly. Using the Mangekyo earlier took a significant amount of chakra and that initial Tsukuyomi had cost him. Suddenly, from the branch above, a large panther pounced, gripping Itachi's arm in its maw before the elder Uchiha could jam a kunai in its side before throwing the large cat off. The cat growled in pain before dispelling. Itachi barely noticed the blade of lightning through the tree branch below him, diving out of the way to avoid a more fatal hit, but still getting nicked in the thigh by Sasuke's attack. The elder Uchiha, sensing Sasuke's intent, gritted through the pain and jumped just in time to avoid AS from Sasuke's sword. Flipping over Sasuke, the Akatsuki member grabbed his younger brother by the shoulder, whipping him back into a nearby tree before stopping for a moment to check on his arm and leg. Sasuke pulled himself out of the tree, also panting and anything but unscathed. Even after seeing that jutsu firsthand from Naruto, Itachi's exploding clone managed to get past his defenses and score a hit just as he was diving into the ground to escape it. Sasuke's vest fell from him, revealing a burned back. Kaiten, great fireball jutsu. Both Uchiha brothers launched their jutsus at one another as the balls of fire met in the middle. As the fireball grew, the two jutsus at a standstill with one another, a few drops of rain began to fall from the sky. Rain today. It had been perfectly clear just a few minutes ago. Between the rain and the brothers stopping their jutsus, the giant fire quickly faded from existence. Good, not much longer now, thought Sasuke. As the flames Sasuke saw Itachi and through his Sharingan, he saw what Itachi was preparing. He could see Itachi amass a considerable amount of chakra into his left eye and all the warning bells that had been drilled into his head were telling him to move as Itachi's Sharingan changed and dripped from his eye. Amaterasu. Sasuke moved just in time as the tree that was once directly behind him burst into black flames. So those are the black flames of Amaterasu I've read about, thought Sasuke, reflecting back on all the time he spent digging through the Uchiha doents hoping to find any sort of information that might help him against Itachi. Sasuke continued to run as various objects behind where he was once standing burst into black flames. However, the flames were catching up to him. He had to stop Itachi from casting the flames as he altered course slightly in order to close the gap on Itachi. But it was too late. As Sasuke activated his Chidori, the black flames of Amaterasu engulfed him. As thunder cracked overhead, a bolt of lightning struck the ground, not too far from where Itachi was standing, and a lightning-encased fist Itachi see from behind. Wide-eyed, Itachi looked on at Sasuke, who was engulfed in black flames only for it to disappear in a puff of smoke. Foolish little brother, smirked Itachi as he also disappeared in a puff of smoke. You're not the only one who can use shadow clones. 2 Mangekyo Sharingan techniques, shadow clones, and various genjutsu. Itachi was definitely starting to feel the chakra drain. And through his Sharingan, Sasuke could see it. Of course, the younger Uchiha wasn't in much better shape, having used shadow clones, Chidori twice, a number of fire jutsus, summoning, and a significant amount of chakra to break that initial Tsukuyomi. Add on to the fact that both of them had sustained physical injuries, and it was obvious these brothers were ready to end it. Another crack of thunder erupted from the heavens and Sasuke smirked. He knew this was the real Itachi before him. The amount of chakra that he was seeing in his older brother was too small to sustain a shadow clone, and he was fluctuating what he had left of his own chakra in order to cancel out any genjutsu that had been cast upon him. This is where it ends, Itachi, declared Sasuke. I'll show you, even without the Mangekyo, that I can still make your death a reality. Sasuke's hand began to crackle and another clash of thunder erupted overhead before a mighty roar belted out from the heavens. Using the power of the heavens themselves, all I have to do now, is guide that power through your skull, explained Sasuke. And with a flick of his wrist, the heavens unleashed their fury. Kirin. On the other side of the lake, Guy ducked underneath as Kisum swung same hadder at Guy. It's been a while since I've really been able to see loose, grinned Kisum. Once again, Kisum dashed towards Guy, bringing down the full fury of his blade upon Guy as the green-clad Jonin pulled out his own weapon, a pair of nunchakus. Mustering his strength, Guy threw Kisum's blade off of him before delivering a powerful kick to the missing Nin's stomach. Kisum grinned as he slid backwards, into the lake. Suten, exploding water shock wave, called out Kisum as the waters of the lake rose up and formed a giant wave. Riding the surf, Kisum and the wave crashed down upon Guy. The Konoha Jonin jumped backwards into a nearby tree, hoping to escape the deluge, but was quickly forced to evacuate the safety of the trees as the massive wave washed him away. Guy's leap was propelling him directly into the path of a second wave, and it was clear he'd crash right into Kisum's jutsu unless. Summoning jutsu. Guy summoned one of his turtles just in time to act like a springboard, propelling him over the crest of Kisum's wave and into calmer waters. However, the damage had been done and the entire battlefield was set up perfectly for shark-like ninja. 3 Kisums rose up from the water surrounding Guy and swung with their swords at Guy. Guy's eyes widened. The way those swords were coming, he couldn't dodge, unless. Guy disengaged the chakra in his feet and slipped beneath the surface of the water, dodging the Kisum's strikes. As Guy stabilized himself underwater, he was about to surface, surprise one of the Kisums and take out the other 2 in a quick strike, but before he could, something bit down on his arm, hard, and began dragging him through the water. Guy saw it. His arm was trapped in the maw of a massive great white shark and it was dragging him further and further beneath the surface, towards the deeper parts of the lake with the hopes of drowning him. The green-clad Jonin struggled to get free, but under the water and against this massive predator, Guy's current strength wasn't enough. Closing his eyes, Guy began to focus his chakra through his body. Gates of opening, healing, life, pain, and limit, open. A massive surge of chakra erupted through Guy's body as his new strength allowed him to easily overpower the shark. After what felt like minutes underwater, Guy had finally surfaced in an explosive manner. However, the environment had changed once again as storm clouds had formed overhead. A shark's nose can sense even just a single drop of B from kilometers away, called out Kisum from an unknown location. As a trickle of B rolled off Guy's injured arm, the Jonin looked down to see hundreds of shadows circling beneath him. And then, just as the next drop of his B dripped onto the water, they attacked. Hundreds of sharks erupted from the water, intent on devouring their spandex-wrapped prey. With 5 gates open, Guy was able to fend off the feeding frenzy, until the water shifted beneath his feet. Guy noticed it too. The sharks moved away from him, with the water, and when he looked up, a massive wave barreled down upon him, a wave composed almost entirely of sharks. Guy growled as Kisum unleashed his jutsu, Suten, 1,000 feeding sharks, upon him. There were too many for him to continuously fend off. Gate of view, open. The water beneath Guy's feet began to swirl as the 6th gate was opened. Power surged through Guy as wisps of water began to swirl around Guy. Morning P. As Guy jumped, he attached the air with a flurry of fists, igniting the air and sending a hail of fire down upon the sharks. As Kisum's jutsu was defeated, the 2 opponents stood on the water and faced each other, one with a determined look and the other with a sharp grin. However, their stare down was broken by loud explosion as a massive bolt of lightning struck down at the very place where Itachi and Sasuke were supposed to be battling. Kisum sensed Guy's distraction and swung with his blade at the Konoha Jonin, but with 6 gates open, Guy's speed was enough for him to duck underneath Kisum's swing and deliver a powerful follow-up kick to the shark ninja's jaw. Flying through the air, Kisum crashed into the water a good distance away from Guy. For what felt like minutes, Guy waited for Kisum's next move, but nothing came. Has that kick K his opponent? No. Even Guy could sense this man was too powerful to ester a mere kick. But there was nothing, it was like Kisum had just vanished. It seemed like his battle was over, or perhaps Kisum had switched his attention. That bolt of lightning wasn't natural. The storm clouds overhead weren't naturally occurring. Guy knew Sasuke was a user of lightning jutsus and the best he could remember, Itachi wasn't. Perhaps Kisum had left to assist his partner. That would be most unyouthful of him, breaking off their fight to gang up on Sasuke. Guy took off at high speed across the lake, still under the influence of the gates, as he went to see if Sasuke's battle had reached its conclusion. Good timing with that Kaiten, Neji, panted Kakashi as Kakazu's jutsu S down. Even with Neji's improved Kaiten, the two Jonin were slightly burned after that combination attack. Where's Naruto and the Kunoichi? Asked Neji as they looked around, only to see the ground right in front of them buckle and bulge. The two Jonin were on guard until a brown and red toad, about the size of a Kamaru, emerged from the ground. Emerging from its mouth was a gasping, and slightly disgusted Samui, followed by Naruto. Phew, that was close, Tobio, said Naruto. It's a good thing Ero Sennin taught me about these guys. Fire toads were a special breed of toad from Mount Myoboku that descended from Iwagama himself. While most toads were aquatic, these guys were special in that they didn't like the water and were fire-based. As such, Jiraiya had taught Naruto that he could escape a strong fire jutsu by hiding in the mouth of one of these toads. I was barely able to summon him in time. I see, good job, Naruto, said Kakashi as the four turned their attention to Kakazu. Lightning, fire, and wind. And all of them powerful. This guy's no pushover. Kakashi-san, motioned Samui as she pointed over towards the one creature lying on the ground. That's the one that burst from Kakazu, right where you hit him with your Reikiri, said Neji. I see, said Kakashi. So rather than K him, I K one of those masked monsters inside of him. Those monsters were where his chakra converged, explained Neji. That first attack that hit Naruto, Karui, and Omoi, one of those things moved before returning to where it was in his body. And don't forget what the other member of Akatsuki said. How you got one of his hearts, said Samui. While he wasn't showing it, he was slightly impressed with this Kunoichi from Kumo. In a sense, she was like Shikamaru, able to remain calm and help analyze the situation, unlike the other Kunoichi on her team. So that means, each one of those monsters has its own heart and they all feed back to him, said Kakashi. What? That's nuts, Kakashi-sensei. So, does this guy then have 5 hearts? Asked Naruto. Actually, 4 since Kakashi-sensei's attack took out 1, said Neji, pointing to the lifeless blob with a cracked mask. I'm going to assume we need to take out all of his hearts if we are going to beat him. Not cool, said Samui. Hey, so you guys figured it out. I'll admit that I'm impressed. They're all hearts I've taken from Shinobi IVK, grinned Kakazu. However, thanks to you, I'll need to restock up on one. How about you, Hitaki Kakashi? You'll do nicely. I'd imagine each of those masks can use only one type of jutsu if what I saw is correct. The same mask that attacked Karui, Omoi, and Naruto-san used the same type of jutsu on us, said Samui. So, fire, wind, and lightning, mulled Kakashi. The fact that this guy could use 3 elements, and to such a high degree, was troubling. We need to take out those masks. As Kakashi finished his train of thought, the lightning mask shot out a surge of lightning towards the Konoha ninja, only for Kakashi to block it with Reikiri. When the lightning ceased, Kakazu was upon him as a stone arm attempted to S Kakashi from his blind spot. Naruto charged up a Rasengan and S it into Kakazu's stone arm, sending the missing nin away. It looks like he can use earth jutsus as well, commented Samui. To say Kakashi was surprised would be an understatement. This guy could use 4 elements and to such a high degree. What kind of monster was he? AKA Maru. A cry was heard following a high-pitched yelp. The momentary distraction was enough for Kakazu as the fire and wind masks once again unleashed their power against their Konoha opponents. As Naruto, Kakashi, Neji, and Samui were caught in the blast of wind, Kakazu was left wondering what happened to the fire. Another close one, said Kakashi. The wind attack, while highly damaging, wasn't fatal to them, but when combined with fire, it was most certainly S. That distraction had almost proven to be their undoing, and it felt like those who were facing Hidden were doing about as well as they were, if not worse based on that outburst. Out of the corner of his eye, Kakashi caught the glint of Naruto's blade, the sealing matrix glowing slightly before fading. At least Naruto had managed to seal the fire jutsu in his blade before it could fully combine with the wind jutsu. One of the Kibas collapsed to the ground before puffing back into the white dog known as a Kamaru. However, Kiba looked on in horror as red began to stain a Kamaru's fur in the sea region. Kiba halted his attack before rushing over to the side of his companion. Akamaru let out a slight whimper before going silent. What? A filthy mutt, shouted Hidden. No. Jashin-sama demands human be, not filthy dog be. The U-priest stepped out of his circle, rushing the closest human to him, Kiba. Dog boy, look out, shouted Karui as Hidden s his scythe down upon Kiba. The Inuzuka just raised his arm, catching Hidden's scythe as the metal buried into his arm and shoulder. Hidden smiled and tried to remove the scythe but was unable to as Kiba held it in place. Now that this bastard was in close, he'd make him pay for what he did to Akamaru. Even Hidden, the U-priest looked on at Kiba with a slight hint of fear as the fires of hell raged within the young Inuzuka's eyes. Looking down, he saw Kiba's free hand become engulfed in fire chakra as the Inuzuka reeled Hidden in and s with a fiery claw. Taking Kiba's attack, Hidden's skin burned as he used the momentum to propel him backwards towards his ritual circle. Kaiten, Hellhound Berserker. As the words left his mouth, Kiba transformed into a flaming hellhound, and Hidden just grinned. It was too late for his next victim anyways as he ingested the bee on the blade of his scythe. Too late, now S for Jashin-sama. As Hidden said that, Kiba charged him. No longer did he care about himself or this weird jutsu of his opponent. No, this bastard K. Akamaru. Even if he'd L this guy limb from limb and make him pay for what he did to Akamaru. Hidden merely smirked as he drove his needle through his heart and waited for Kiba to crumple to the ground, like a dog. But Kiba just kept coming. Why was his ritual not working? Before Hidden could remove the needle, Kiba s out with flaming bestial claws, driving them into Hidden's stomach as he tackled the Akatsuki member to the ground. As the hellhound Kiba bit into Hidden's arm, the priest screamed out in pain. Sure, he enjoyed the pain, but only when he was inflicting the pain or sharing it with his victims. However, this beast wasn't showing any signs of suffering. Why? His ritual was perfect. He ingested the bee, he stood in the ritual circle. Wait, why was his ritual circle moving? Hidden watched as his ritual circle turned into a bunch of mice and scurried away. No, this couldn't be happening. He had to get out of this beast's grasp and remake the circle. Kiba bit down harder, severing Hidden's arm, and the priest cried out in pain. This wasn't the type of pain he wanted. No, the Jashin worshipper let a look of panic slip onto his face as Kiba's jaws closed in around his N, his fangs digging into Hidden's F's. With one last cry of pain out of Hidden, Kiba's jaws snapped shut and Hidden's head popped off his body. Everyone present, even the other Akatsuki member, watched as Hidden was K. At least that will stop that mouth of his, commented Kakazu as he turned his attention to his opponents. Even he had to admit he wasn't in a great position anymore as he recalled his masks and more threads burst from his body. Where were Itachi and Kisame? They should have been here by now. Oh no you don't, shouted Naruto as a sizable portion of clones surrounded the yellow mask, see off its retreat to Kakazu. The lightning mask unleashed its fury upon the clones before its attack reached Naruto. The blonde Uzumaki grinned as his sword intercepted the jutsu and the lightning was absorbed. As the hilt glowed, Naruto made a go for the yellow masked monster, the sword into the threads. Stupid kid, grinned Kakazu. It would take a little more than a sword to bring down his mask, but the Jinchuriki just smirked as he unsealed the stored chakra in his blade, enveloping the masked creature in a maelstrom of violent chakra. As the chakra storm receded, the beast lay on the ground, mask shattered into pieces as Kakazu growled. Good, that's one less mask to worry about, said Kakashi. Across the room, the other two masks merged with Kakazu as threads poured out from his body, revealing the monstrosity that he is to the Konoha ninja. Over with Kiba, the Inuzuka had snapped back to his senses and cancelled the transformation before dragging himself over to Akamaru where Haku was checking on the dog. He's alive, somehow, but he needs attention. Haku's words snapped Kiba out of his mindless trance as Haku removed his hand from where Akamaru's wound was, showing that he had at least stopped the bee by freezing the wound shut for the moment. But how are you still alive? Asked Karui. That jutsu of his, why didn't it injure you like it did me or your dog? It's because once I saw how much emphasis he placed on that circle, I realized that it had to be a major part of his jutsu. If we could stop him from entering his circle, then perhaps we could disrupt his jutsu, said Haku. As such, I instructed Sai to use his ink beasts to create a fake circle, tricking him into the wrong circle and allowing Kiba the chance to attack without being in danger. Yo Mr. 9. announced KB as he arrived on the scene. Miss Pink can save Lil too, she thinks, but needs you to seal some of Hachibi-san into her. Kakashi took a moment to examine the state of everyone. He, Neji, and Samui, while tired, could still fight. Haku and Sai were also in decent shape, as was Naruto, but it sounded like Naruto was needed elsewhere. Kiba, Karui, and Omoi, while alive, were battered and in pretty bad shade. And Akamaru, well, the poor dog needed attention and fast. Naruto, take Kiba, Karui, Omoi, and Akamaru to Sakura, ordered Kakashi. Naruto nodded. He wanted to stay and fight the Akatsuki bastards, but the urgency in B's voice told him he was desperately needed somewhere else. Hey, are you sure you want to face me without that brat of yours? Seems like he's pretty good at holding his own, smirked Kakazu. Don't worry, we'll be enough for you, said Kakashi as he, Neji, Haku, Sai, and Samui regrouped. Kakazu grinned as his transformation completed. Threads spilling out of the seams that were on his body. In a way, he kind of resembled a mix between his monstrosities and a person, only with 3 heads. Watch out, warned Neji as he noticed chakra building up in Kakazu's masks. All 5 shinobi took cover as Kakazu unleashed his combination attack upon them. Haku channeled as much chakra into his Hyoten, ice dome as possible, but as with his snare for hidden, the ice fell prey to the heat of the wind-backed fire. However, as the fire ate through one barrier, it was met with a second defense by Neji's earth-reinforced chitin. Their combined defenses held as Kakazu stared at the 5 shinobi. As soon as they had their opening, Neji charged, flanked by Sai and Samui. Kakazu grinned as he unleashed his threads upon the 3 shinobi. Sai and Samui were quickly skewered by the attack, quickly dissolving and revealing themselves to be ink clones. As the threads approached Neji, Samui came falling from the ceiling, drawing her tanto and channeling her lightning chakra into it, allowing it to pass through many of the threads targeting Neji. However, Kakazu pressed his defense and a few threads continued on towards Neji. Neji gritted his teeth. They had to take out one of those hearts and this was their best chance. While the threads would L him if he continued, he could ensure the threads didn't L any vital points. The Hyuga Jonin contorted his body in such a way so that 2 of the threads L his shoulder and side, avoiding anything critical as he unleashed his power. Yukan, 8 trigrams, Mountain Crusher. Neji unleashed a powerful burst of chakra from his palm just as the fire mask readied an attack to defend. As the mask unleashed its attack, Neji's upgraded vacuum palm snuffed the fire out and collided with the mask, shooting Kakazu back across the cavern and shattering the fire mask. That was pretty cool, for a Hyuga, complimented Samui. We're not done yet, Neji gritted, as Kakazu picked himself out of the rubble from his impact with a nearby boulder. As the last pieces of the fire mask fell from his shoulder, the Akatsuki member was furious. He had lost 3 hearts because of these clowns. He knew Kakashi would be an exceptional replacement for a lightning heart and that ice user was intriguing him too. The others would just have to make do until he found one more heart that interested him. Kakazu dove out of the way as Kakashi burst from the ground, Reikiri activated. Hey, you must be stupid if you think I'm falling for that again. Kakazu hardened his fist into a stone spear and s it into Kakashi's sea, just below his heart. Now, I'll be taking what you owe me. As he went for Kakashi's heart, the copy ninja burst into a shower of rain, revealing it to be a water clone, soaking Kakazu. Kakazu's attention was directed upwards as Kakashi came diving out of the air, riding atop the same ink bird Samui had come from originally, Reikiri once again active. Kakazu grinned as he sent his threads towards the copy ninja, intent on skewering him before he could take out another heart. I don't think so, said Haku as he managed to grab one of Kakazu's straggling threads. Hyoten, Sub-Zero Entrapment. As Kakazu's threads barreled towards Kakashi, they started freezing, courtesy of Haku's jutsu. Leading with his Reikiri, Kakashi plowed through the frozen threads as the ice began to encase Kakazu. Despite trying to resist, the lack of his fire mask made it impossible for him to overpower the ice as he froze completely. Once Kakashi's Reikiri hit its target, the Akatsuki shattered into pieces. They had somehow done it, they had managed to beat these immortal monstrosities of Akatsuki. Kakashi panted as Sai and Haku helped pull him to his feet. This battle had taken a toll on his chakra and the copy ninja was glad he wasn't facing this guy alone like he did with Sasori. Let's go meet up with Naruto, Sakura, and the others, suggested Kakashi, no one arguing. No one except. Oi, where do you think you're going? Sasuke could only help but look on in horror as Itachi stood in front of him, encased in some sort of giant purple skeleton. Kirin was his most powerful jutsu. While developing it, there was nothing that survived or endured. Its sole purpose was to obliterate enemies, and yet, his brother still stood after taking the very jutsu designed to kill him. Had his ultimate jutsu done nothing? To think you'd make me use it, my trump card, spoke Itachi. Behold the pinnacle of the Mangekyo's power, Susanoo. Itachi took a step forward, causing Sasuke to take a step back. However, Itachi fell to his knee and his chakra shroud flickered as the elder Uchiha began to violently cough up B. Looking on, Sasuke began to realize. Had his jutsu actually done something? Yes, while Itachi's powers protected him from being obliterated, Kirin must have still damaged Itachi significantly. Sasuke didn't have much chakra remaining, but he formed a Chidori in hand and extended his Chidori sharp spear towards Itachi. The attack failed as it came into contact with the Susanoo. Sasuke focused more chakra into his jutsu and tried to push, barely budging a few inches into the chakra shroud, but still nowhere near Itachi. As Itachi stood to his feet and began to stagger towards Sasuke, fear entered the younger of the Uchiha. He couldn't let it end like this. Why was this happening? Why wouldn't Itachi s already? Why was he so weak? Then, Sasuke saw it, a crack. A crack right where his spear hit. He didn't have enough chakra for a full Chidori, so Sasuke grabbed his sword and channeled the remainder of his chakra into it as the blade crackled with electricity. As Itachi slowly dragged himself towards Sasuke, the younger Uchiha aimed his blade and charged, his target, the crack in the Susanoo. Time slowed as the blade approached the armor. Sasuke almost expected the blade to stop, to shatter, to break against the armor that had saved Itachi from obliteration, but the blade fell through the crack in the armor as Itachi's defense flickered slightly, Sasuke's momentum carrying the blade through its ultimate target, Itachi's heart. As Sasuke himself ran into the Susanoo, he fell to his knees upon hitting the armor. Looking up at his brother, he was expecting Itachi's face to be something along the lines of anger, or fear, or surprise. But a smile. Why was Itachi smiling? Forgive me, Sasuke, with his last words, the elder Uchiha fell to the ground. Uchiha Itachi was S. Jutsus. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu rank, A uses, Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto. Chidori rank, A uses, Uchiha Sasuke. Chidori Sharp Spear rank, A uses, Uchiha Sasuke. Exploding Shadow Clone rank, A uses, Uchiha Itachi, Uzumaki Naruto. Amaterasu rank, S uses, Uchiha Itachi. Kirin rank, S uses, Uchiha Sasuke. Suten, 1,000 Feeding Sharks rank, B uses, Hoshigaki Kisame. Morning P rank, A uses, Matogai. Kaiten, Hellhound Berserker, a transformation, similar to his Kaiten, two-headed Hellhound, where Kiba alone transforms into a flaming Hellhound, increasing his speed and ferocity. Rank, A uses, Inuzuka Kiba. Yuken, 8 trigrams, Mountain Crusher rank, A uses, Hyuga Neji, Hyuga Hiyashi. Reikiri rank, S uses, Hitaki Kakashi. Hyoten, Sub-Zero Entrapment rank, A uses, Yuki Haku. Susanoo rank, S uses, Uchiha Itachi. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.